Hey guys, it's Thorin, also known as 944. Don't forget Thorin's YouTube channel.
This video is of course brought to you by Gamersubs, isn't it? Where you can save 10% on anything on their store, including their delicious energy formula, using my code, Thorin, my name, Thorin, at gamersubs.gg. Obviously, if you were to pick out some broadcast analysts that I like flavours, let's go with myself. I would probably be something like Guacamole Gamer Fart 9000, because some people think I'm silly or an idiot or just trash. But actually, that's secretly the flavour strawberry and lime, which always goes well together, has like a sweetness to it that's hidden because it then has like a little kick that adds onto it to make it a bit nuanced. Maybe that'd be me. Also, it's one of my favourite flavours. If I was going to do Janko, obviously he's Serbian. He's coming in there with that rough attitude. It's that no but. Well, it's not actually that, that disagreeable tone, but still, you love him, you know him. He's got that quality where you always want him to be there. So I'd probably say something a bit tangy for that, maybe. Maybe I'll do Mango Meta. Then we'll say, obviously, another classic one would be SPUNJ, who I actually thought was one of the best analysts. He's not quite as spicy, but he's still willing to sort of open topics that are big. So I'll say, we're going to go with Cherry Lime Skull for that one. It's just really nice. It's got a little bit of tang to it, but nothing crazy. Yeah, there you go. Now let's get into this one. For this tier list, I am going to do a CSGO broadcast analysts tier list. And I actually made this one myself, and I added all the images myself. And I'm on there, and I'm going to rank everyone. It's going to be according to my criteria. So if we go down, I'll quickly go through who they all are. There's Alan Hender, my boy. There's Blair. There's Bobski. That's right. There's Cadian. He did do a few events, and I thought he clearly could have been an analyst. Davey, the former Splice player. Dazed in iBuyPower IGL, could have done way more events if he wanted to. That's Devilwalk. Dost. We've got Fiflaren. We've got Hawker. We've got Kassad. Lurpis. Moore. Mahone. Maniac. Quite an unfortunate picture there. We've got Maui Snake. Moses. Nothing. Natu. Peacemaker, Pimp, Potter, Richard Lewis, Sean Gares, aka Big Airs, Semphis, SPUNJ, Steel, Thorin, aka Esports, Threat, Vendetta, and then Yankos. It's in alphabetical order, isn't it? So I'm going to use all these tiers. I'm going to rank every single person here. I'm going off things like, look, I will say this. When fans pick analysts, 99% of you are lying to yourselves and everyone else when you claim it's because of deep analytical insight or strategical depth or their knowledge of the game. Because since you're not capable of being at the level of having deep analytical knowledge of the game, or you have no way of judging if they're even saying the right thing or not. Like, I could go and learn a load of physics terms and make it sound like I'm talking really smart, intelligent stuff, but you'd have to know physics to know if I'm talking up my arse or not. So what you actually do it based on is things like, number one, do you like them? Number two, this is almost like, do you like them, but it's similar. How annoying are they to them? If they're not annoying enough and you like them quite a lot, that's going to make them really good. If you like them, but they're also annoying, that's going to make them in the middle. You see what I mean there? I judge off technical ability, but you judge the number one factor is actually entertaining, but you have to like someone for them to be entertaining. That's just the way human bias works. And then I'm going to judge things like technical ability. How well can they speak? How can they put their segments together? Can they actually work team play element, synergy? Can they work with others? Can they actually pick up something from someone else and do something with it? Things like knowledge are good, history is good, but it's not essential. So we're going to go off these factors. I've actually worked with most of the people on this list. Let me look quickly. I've worked with Alan Hender, I've worked with Blair, I've worked with... fun fact, Cadian only even got his start as an analyst on EMS 1 kind of 8 here because I didn't get to work it because I said Poland is fucking trash. I've worked with Dazed at ECS. I think Devil might have done with Desk, I'm not sure. I've worked with Dust, obviously. I've worked loads with Fiflaren. I've worked with Hawker on Flashpoint. I've never worked with Kassad on a desk. I've worked with Lurpus a bunch. Never worked with Moore because he actually was my stand-in when I couldn't make it there because I didn't have my VZ at Free League. I've never worked with Mahone. I've worked with Maniac tons. Obviously, RIP on that one. I've worked with Maui Snake on 3 events, but not as many as you'd think. Going to be working on that Elisa SPU Masters soon, aren't I? 16th to the 20th of October as a straight fire desk. If you don't know, it's me, Maui Snake, Richard Lewis is the desk, Banks is interviewing, Anders is casting, so is Vince, and so is Jackie. So fuck around with that. That's already better than some of the tier 1 events. I obviously worked a ton with Moses. I've done some desks with nothing. You'll find out when I rank him quite low why I didn't enjoy that. I worked with Natu, he's one mate of mine back in the day. I don't think I've ever done a desk with Peacemaker. I did some desk with Pimp. I helped form him in some ways, he's a friend of mine. I did some desk with Potter, obviously. I also think I could have taken her to the top. She was my lead analyst on Flashpoint. I've obviously done loads with Richard Lewis. Yes, he was an analyst and he can be an analyst. I think he even should be. People just don't think of him that way and hire him that way. And they go, you know, nothing throughout the game. He has the ability to be a pundit because he's watched the game for like 20 years, you moron. I want to know, his thoughts are more interesting to me than like some pro players because I want to know how he thinks and I know how he thinks about sports. He follows a bunch of sports. Sean Gares, I've worked with a bunch. Semphis, you won't believe it, but I actually did work with him in the early days. He can go fuck himself now. What a twat. Maybe one day I'll do a petty grievances on him. There's basically he tried to imply like punked me in real life and would have beat the fuck out of me. Meanwhile, the whole time around the time he said he did that, he was just in my DMs like, can you please recommend me to like analysts? Yeah, go fuck yourself, you actual fucking juice head arsehole, allegedly in Minecraft. Then we've got SPUNJ, obviously I worked with him, he's the shit. I did technically do a CS Summit with Steel, but sadly I haven't really worked with him. He's one of the people also who replaced me with Katie at Katowice. Then there's me, I've worked every event with myself. Sometimes I'm the best, sometimes I annoy myself. I don't really actually, I never really annoy myself. Threat, I might have done an event or two with, I'm not certain. I think I might have done one. I know I've worked events with him. I don't know if he was actually an analyst. I think he was a commentator most of the time. Vendetta, I've done a bunch of events with. I think I even did one like 2019 with him. And then Yanko, I did loads with. If you don't know, when Yanko began, he really was a guy in like an awkward suit who looks like his fucking dad's suit he's taken to the prom. And he just, like his, I thought his accent was fine the whole time, but he just essentially said tactical stuff. So I just told him, I mean, I'll get to this later, but I basically told him, like, you do all the tactical shit, I won't even venture into that. And then when I throw the historical stuff, pick up something from that and it'll look like the synergy in the desk makes sense and is coherent. And I actually think that's one of the things that helped him get to tier 1. So, as always, I am extremely discriminating when it comes to if you get the top spots. Like, put it this way, Moses is my friend, he might not go in S, we'll see. Some of these people I really like, they might not get into S. There's only going to be the absolute best get into S. So let's start with S tier, shall we? I won't just go in order, we'll start with S tier. Right, first things first, we're going to go Thorin. Yeah, ooh. Ooh, well, you're not supposed to say that you're the best. You should let other people say that. Oh, I'm sorry, when did God say that? Was that like the first of the 10 commandments? Oh, can you show me where that's written down by some authority that I have to believe that? Oh, you just heard it, did you? Oh, and then are you the moron who goes, Michael Jordan didn't say he is the GOAT. Look, in this video, he said he didn't play in other areas. Privately, he says he's the GOAT to everyone, you fucking idiot. He just doesn't do it publicly because he wants you to think stupid shit like that about him and then buy sneakers, aka trainers, fuck Americans. So, actually, the greatest people of all time, I've checked notes, say they are the greatest of all time, like John Jones, fucking Muhammad Ali. Are you fucking kidding me? Of course they say they're the best. They earned it. Some little rat like you, the fucking jealousy of the little man. It's like, you can't say that you're good though. You have to let me say it, so then I won't say it, and then you don't get to be the best. Well, you know what, bitch? If you don't want to give me my credit, I'll take my motherfucking credit. Just like I took the analysis job. Because remember, when I started, the only people doing analysis were fucking ex-pros. In fact, as you'll see on that list, the majority of them are ex-pros. Even Maui Snake played at like a semi-pro level. I wasn't, but I did the most majors as a primary analyst in CSGO, so suck on that. I thought I was the most entertaining, the most funny. I actually had some pretty good tactical insights. I just didn't step out of my lane when I didn't have ones that I thought would add anything more than what I knew the others were going to talk about. Sometimes they'd say in the green room what they might want to talk about. I tried to stick with the historical aspect because I also think, by the way, the colour commentator does most of the fucking tactical stuff, obviously, doesn't he? That's why people like SPUNJ and Moses and even potentially a Maui want to gravitate to that role. So for me, desk is about entertainment, knowing what you're talking about, saying things that have value and contribute to a conversation and make points that need to be made. I'm also probably the best at calling out bad players or overrated players or CS royalty. So yes, I'm putting myself number one, and this is in general just an S tier in no order, but I'm putting myself number one, aren't I? I am esports. So then I'm going to put, next after that, I'm going to put Yanko. Because if I didn't exist, wouldn't Yanko be the GOAT? Certainly, when he came back after coaching, some people didn't like his style as much. And you notice that's when everyone turned on him. He's just a fraud because of MIBR and Faith Clan. He actually did all right in those teams, by the way. He did pretty well in MIBR at the end, in my opinion. I always thought he had a good tactical insight, but he didn't make it boring. And he also has an angle where now he's learned to be a little bit spicy, and he's someone who just genuinely loves Counter-Strike, and you can tell it when he talks about the game. Like in the green room, he's the guy wrapped in attention on the game, jumping up when it's like the rounds of the people he cares about winning, or when it's somebody he doesn't like, he thinks they're overrated, he's flaming them while he's doing it. Just someone who's a guy who's done loads and loads of years. He could just do this game. He could do this gig as long as he wants, and if he'd wanted to stick around when he went off to be a coach, he could probably have beat my record just like Moses could have as a primary analyst. They just didn't. And so because they didn't, tough shit. They might have done, but they didn't. I didn't stop them. So Yanko easily S tier, by the way. Then I'm going to go SPUNJ. I always thought, in a sane world, which we'll never have because they only make the analyst desk a bitch, red-headed stepchild to the actual commentators and the rest of the broadcast, if you actually treated the analyst desk like CBS Golazzo or Inside the NBA, or basically its own entity that matters and is important and should have its own entertainment value, then people like SPUNJ and Yanko would never go and do commentary. They'd just stay on the desk and you'd pay the desk the most or something. This would be in a different world, obviously, a bit like Dota. So as a result, I always thought SPUNJ is better on the desk than he is as a commentator. I think I'd probably put him A tier as a colour commentator, but I think I would put him S tier as an analyst. I thought he was very, very good. And I thought he did a good job of having his own professional outlook without referencing too much about being a pro. I hate it when desk hosts take people who are pros, but low-level pros. Chad was never a top player, and they asked him, oh, what would you do? But they have never done fuck all. The joke of why he kept going on and on about the fucking ESO and Clone is he had fuck all runs deep in tournaments. He doesn't know what you do in a semi-final of a major, for fuck's sake. It's not comparable to be like in the fucking round of 16 of like a dream hack or something, is it? Like it's not the same shit. So that's where you know that even some of the hosts get caught up in your bullshit of like, I want to know what pros think and I want to know what tactics are going on. Yeah, miss me with that. I'd rather play tic-tac-toe and make it entertaining than hear about fucking tactics. I could do a whole thing with ticks. You must have Tourette's for tactics. Fucking hell. Give me a break. Take a tic-tac and shut the fuck up. Your breath stinks, whatever. I don't even know where I was going with that one. You stink. Your opinion stinks. There you go. What's coming out your mouth stinks. There you go. I workshopped it. We'll edit all that in post to make it look sick and I'll just go straight to the gag. Then I'm going to go, let's see here. Because there's not a lot of people who are ST, I've got to say. Let's see. Who else would I put? Oh, wait a second. I'm going to put Sean Gares. Because the only downside Sean Gares had was he didn't do enough volume of events. So sometimes, for example, he might like talk a little bit too much, just simple technical things that people learn after enough years. He didn't get enough events to get synergy with some of us, but I always thought he had very good insights. Like his weren't just tactical insights, they were strategic insights. If you don't know the difference, go and learn the difference between the word strategy and tactics. I actually think I'm an excellent strategic analyst. I'm not a very good tactical analyst. I don't study demos that way. I'm looking for player performance and how people do things. But if you notice, I'm very good at picking out styles that play each other and counter each other and on what maps people would be good, and also predicting the veto. I'm probably the best at the veto to ever do it, by the way, still, including all of them that do it now. If you want to change that otherwise, fucking step your game up, bitch. So I'm going to put Sean Gares there. He was a very good all-rounder and he had deep horizontal knowledge, obviously in terms of tactical stuff, etc. He would just point out things even in the green room that he didn't see on the desk that were brilliant that you'd remember, and you'd see in the next game exactly what he was talking about happen. So I'm going to put him S tier. I think that might be the last S tier though. Let me think. Oh, wait, so what am I talking about? Obviously, Maniac is up there. By the way, I'm just going to go ahead and say this. Why the fuck in a video about CSGO analysts would I address anything outside of the server, nothing to do with esports, about the people? At the end of the day, what Maniac did or didn't do outside of the server has no actual bearing on how good he was at his job when he did it. And so historically, in the same way as if we were doing a StarCraft Brood War best 1v1 players, I would put Savior, who apparently match fixed, it was a criminal case, I would still put Maniac as S tier. I actually thought before the online era, he was one of those people who would just be A tier and probably never get any further. I used to tell him, what you need to do is craft a persona, and your persona, I've said this many times, is you should be the professor, like the one who's an ex-pro, but you're not ex-pro in an overbearing way, you just have some grounding, and then since you like philosophy, you're going to talk about like what's wonderful about the game. You're almost like an English professor in that sense, and you're going to be the person who like makes people fall in love with Counter-Strike. So I always thought he did a great job with it. It seems to me, like whether I just predicted it or you'd listened to me, I thought he did do that. I thought he did an excellent job towards the end. And he was the king for the last couple of years. Then, let me see. Because here's the sad thing. Maui is right on the line. He's between S and A. And the reason I say that, I'll put him S for the moment. We'll see at the end if there's too many, I'll bring him down. He just hasn't done enough events. That's the problem. He only had that year and a half where he was getting all the gigs. Then there started being majors he wasn't hired to. There started being big Colognes and Katowices they weren't hiring him to, which actually kind of cut out his ability to get more experience, to get more under his legs. But I did think at his peak he was S tier. Historically, this is the problem. We count people against everyone in all history here. I don't know. For now, I'm going to put him S tier. I do think he has, by the way, maniac at everything. He just had technical ability. He could make jokes at times that wasn't really his vein, was it? He was actually very charming on camera. He had great charisma, I always thought. He was a very classy individual on camera. He did take that thing of waxing lyrical and do a great job with it. I think also, even though I thought he got a bit too caught up in this, he did try to address community drama around opinions and try and fight his corner. Maui is obviously added some elements in some ways. He's a protege of mine in many ways. Not only did I give him his first gigs, but also he's tried to do my style, hasn't he? Where you also tried to mix in a little bit of history. You tried to make the narrative a big one. You're willing to call out the top players and get into beefs with people. Obviously, you come up with your own memes, that casual impact one, cultural impact one for Ziwu, or the Ziwu air quality, or Katie in the main character. Look, I technically did Katie in the main character on Snake and Battle, but all right, he used it on the desk. He did some great work with that major. I think I'll put him S tier for now, but this might be the only S tier. Because let me look who else we've got here. The problem most of the other ones have is they either just aren't S tier or they didn't have enough time or experience. So let me see. Because I'm trying to do people who are the complete package. So for example, I'm going to hurt some feelings immediately. I'm going to put Moses A tier. And the reason why is this. If I'm going off what a fan judges, he's instantly S tier. In fact, he might be number one. And the reason why is this. Moses is maybe the most likable person on camera of anyone who ever worked in Counter-Strike. And so maybe Freya would be second or something. Anders. He's just someone where you just love listening to him. He's just a funny guy. He's got a great laugh. He joins in. He's a team player. He'll talk about anything, even if he doesn't necessarily have great insights or something deep to talk about. He can have good insights. By the way, when he casts and he has time to look at the game and break it down, he can make some really interesting points. He just synergizes with everyone he works with. Him and Anders, that's why them together was just obvious. They're just probably the two best sort of team players in the history of broadcast at this point in time. They can work with anyone. Hence why when Pansy used to cast with other people, you all hated on her. When she casted with Moses, it was straight fire. They should have been a tier one duo all the events, but people didn't have the vision for it, and they hated on Pansy too much. So I could also put Moses S tier for ability, but I always thought the problem was when more people came along, especially the ex-pros who wanted to go deep on the tactics and stuff like that. I always thought the issue was he didn't try to do that as much, and so he ended up being an all-rounder. So for me at the moment, I'm going to put him A. I think in terms of technical aspects, he's pretty good as well. He does, by the way, have good knowledge of the game, of course. But again, the point is, in theory, you can't be good at everything all the time. So you all have to commit to something that you're doing. So, and also, he left being an analyst. So if he kept doing it as long as me and Yanko, maybe he'd be S tier as well. I'm going to put him A tier for now. Then I'm going to pick Richard Lewis. That's probably already going to hurt some feelings. But because obviously he isn't as likable as a Moses, because some people just hate him. Some people go, he's divisive and polarizing, which just means you don't like him. That would apply to anyone who's not universally loved, wouldn't it? So I think he was underrated as an analyst because he wasn't trying to do analysis. He was doing punditry, where he sometimes gives analysis. So what he was doing was getting interesting talking points or addressing things in the community or bringing up angles of things like... He wouldn't necessarily do the history. He'd do more things like things he knows about those people or things he's heard. By the way, sometimes he would go and talk to people like Sean Gers and God Bean, get some great pointers to bring to the desk. He would try to set up the storylines as well and touch on bigger picture things or stimulate back and forth. Obviously, me and him had some of the best back and forth ever because our rapport became by the numbers. It's just award-winning, isn't it? Same as with Moses, I have great rapport. So, but I will say, obvious and also technically, he was pretty good. That's why he's a great host. He's probably better as a host, but I know he likes to do analysis, so I do think he deserves to be A, actually. I think you could here's the difference. If I took all these guys, gave them no prep, and just threw them on a desk and threw random game there, he could entertain and make it good. Some of the people in S tier might even struggle a little bit. That might shock you to say. So, I mean, obviously me and him came from the era and Moses, where you didn't even have prep time. You just worked all day. You just took whatever they threw to you. Obviously, me and him were part of the Gfinity's Angels, so I'm going to shock people that he's there. Then we're going to go, let me see, who's next? Pimp? That's already going to hurt people's feelings, including, sadly, if he tunes in Pimps. Like, Pimp's going to watch this and go, what the fuck? We're friends. Like, and we worked together. Like, you always said I was good. And yeah, I did. That's all true. But the point is, I'm being harsh here, mate. In the same way as if we're making a list of the greatest CSGO players of all time, and I put Simple and Nico and Device, and then I start going down, and from S tier, can I actually put Flusher S tier if it's like Simple, Device, Nico, Gold Zero? No, Flusher probably has to bounce to A, doesn't he? Just because only so many people can be S tier. So the issue with Pimp is this. Even though he's a friend of mine, I do like to work with him. I like him on desks, by the way. I actually think he's gotten better the last couple of years. My issue is, I don't know, actually. You know what? I'll probably revisit that one. That might be the one I end up putting S. He's on the brink. He's right on the line for me, just like Moses, between A and S. Richard's A, but they're on the brink between S and A for me. And I do think that the problem I had was he tried to be an all-rounder, and I don't think that actually suited him as well. I wanted him to be the spicy guy. He's starting to do that a little bit more now. I also like him to do banter, but he does banter in sort of a little bit too much of a straightforward way, in my opinion. So then if the person's like wrecks him back, it doesn't always work as well. I always feel like I don't feel like he takes the banter back as well, where sometimes I'll just take it or I'll throw a joke and be self-deprecating in that sense. He has good insight into the game. He has his own angle. I'll say now he lives the game, but there were some years where I felt like sometimes he did it as a job and he didn't necessarily go as crazy and hammer on some of the other people who've done insane research. I'm going to put him A tier for now, but I might move him to S. We'll see. Who am I going next? Right, I'm going Potter next. I also could have put her before. Right, Potter could have been S tier, but she stayed A because she just didn't get enough reps at tier 1. What happened was they just put people like ESL. Do you want a little story? People like ESL goes, well, we work with any key and we have ESL Impact and we have women's leagues and we believe in women and we trust women and women are so great and we're going to promote women. And then you go, all right, well, you got Potter there, former multiple-time world champion, who I know knows the game, even has a spicy side if you know how to bring it out of her. We'll do loads of research. We'll synergize well with everyone. Nobody has any problems with Potter whatsoever. She can even be funny. And she even, in her own way, as like an anti-type figure, can call, as in like the sister of your mum or dad, can call people out, but in a charming way that doesn't make it too harsh. And they just wouldn't put her on the top events. They told you all that walk shit, and then they just viewed her as a token and chucked her on some DreamHack Opens and gave her like one baby spot on a DreamHack Masters once. I took her on a Flashpoint and made him the lead analyst. If there hadn't have been some tech issues at Flashpoint 2, it wasn't even going to be Maui and me on the final doing analysis. It was actually going to be me and Potter. And that's what I thought. She actually was the best performer of all the analysts at Flashpoint 2. I was going to give her that status. Oh, by the way, since people like ESL didn't give her the spots because they were cynical bastards who don't care about women like that and don't think women can be capable of being the best, they just fucked around to the point she just left and became a coach in Valorant, and Czech Snorts won the world championship. Okay. So I thought she's definitely A tier, top of A tier. She could have been S tier. You give me let's say 4 to 5 more events with her, so 2 years, let's say, I would make her S tier. Now, before you go, you would make her. I worked with most of these people. I tried to give these people pointers, tell them what I'm doing on the desk, things I've seen about their game. I'm just friends with them, so as friends I can listen to what they're thinking and tell them things, etc. I've tried to help everyone I could with rates and what they do in terms of... Also, by the way, if I know I'm not going to work at an event, I tell them, hey, listen, they're on the lookout for someone I've recommended you for this. I even famously with Yanko told E-League, you should have hired this guy. You actually fucked up. And the guy goes, thinking he's counted me, like, well, what if we'd only been able to hire 2 or we were already hired Moses because he's in the America, so it would be you who wouldn't get hired. Then I said, well, then I think I should be hired because I'm the best, but the fans would say hire Yanko, so you fucked up, mate. That's not accounting. You probably should have hired Yanko. You know what? The next year when I turned down an event, they hired Yanko. The rest is history. You got to do the Boston Major, whole bunch more events. Put it this way, I won't say how, but he was always somebody who was he also showed his gratitude when I helped him out in his career. Quite a cool guy in that sense. Oh no, it's going to be, yeah, I mean, Lurpis was ex-pro. I'm going to put Lurpis A because he had good insights into the game, but I did think he could be a little bit repetitive. He just didn't do enough events and he wasn't in the era when people started thinking about these things. He just did the era when you watch the games, you go out and say what you want. It could be funny, but it was in a very idiosyncratic way, which some people perceived as mean, but he's just Finnish / a guy who's just a little bit antisocial. I obviously synergized well with him from podcast onwards. We've just been friends for like 10 plus years at this point in time. I did think in terms of technical ability, sometimes he hadn't done enough events in the modern era, so I don't think he'd be at the top at that scale. I also think people just didn't like him as much, unfortunately. And he didn't always synergize as well. Like, for example, if he didn't respect someone, I didn't feel like he synergized well with them, whereas I'm actually amazing at sort of just like finding a way to banter them because I don't fuck with them, but make it seem fun and then make it like we got past it. And he obviously didn't do enough events for me. And if you don't know, when he was doing events in CSGO, he was usually actually doing like his work at like fucking JP Morgan. So he'd be on his phone sometimes between games. Or he was like studying at like fucking whatever that university he went to get like a finance degree. Let me see. Who am I going with next? I think I'm going to go Steel now. Right, Steel could be S tier, I believe. I think he has the potential. He hasn't done enough events. And when he has, this is what's funny. This is where I'm sure he is actually surprised he doesn't get more gigs. Because you've all told him and gaslit all the broadcast talent for 20 years. I mean, actually, let's be real, it's probably more about 10 to 12 years. You've said all you care about is tactical insight, not even strategic things, which are more like applicable to a desk where you have 30 seconds to talk. You want deep tactical insights. Well, that's his shit. Him and Sean Gares are the kings of that shit. So logically, you must think he's the number one analyst of all time. And he must be on every event. He must be the most popular. He isn't. And part of the problem is, because you all say that, and maybe when he watches the broadcast, maybe that's what he wants to hear, I think he over-specialises in that and over-indexes. I think he can be funny, but a bit like Lurpus, it sometimes comes off as a bit mean, and I think sometimes he has an issue, for example, that famous one at CS Summit where he was just bodying existence and Kenny S all the time, like, come on, mate, like that felt like you can lean into your bias to be funny or make a point, but that felt like, God, I'm not going to say bullying, because you're just making an analysis at the end of the day, but I think you were over-critical for a broadcast. Yeah, I can say that, by the way. There's reasons why I would say that I wouldn't say about myself, because actually there's certain lines I tried not to cross, or I tried to talk to the others and go, are you going to make this kind of point? Okay, you can temper it with that then, okay, well, because I'm going to go hard on this angle. So I do think his actual game knowledge is mega. I think he's also someone, I don't know that he synergizes with everyone that well, but I think he can be very good. He's very, very good as a specialist, and I think if he'd had more time or worked like me, he could have broadened out and been a bit more of an all-rounder. Maybe he still will. Let me see, who am I going to go with next? By the way, I'm sure people are already like, why haven't you picked Blair? Listen, I don't have to rate everyone. I don't have to think everyone's the best. That's the thing about being Thorin. I'll say who I actually think I want to go where. Blair might end up B tier. I'm sorry. That's just how it goes. Actually, why am I saying I'm sorry? I'm not. That's just a British thing to say. It's just an expression, isn't it? Just how it is, mate. I've never lied to him and told him I think you're the best or something, or you have to hire you or hire me. I've never done that for you. I just thought he was a good analyst, a good all-rounder. I didn't ever think he was the best in any one area. And I think synergizing, sometimes he had a little bit of trouble with that. So I think maybe I'll actually immediately pop in B. So I think he's just going to go B. Because I always thought the problem Blair had sometimes was, it's really, this might seem funny because people think essentially, to use basketball terms, that every time I get the ball, I shoot. That's not true at all. Sometimes I intentionally use it to throw back to someone else and put back into all their points, or I just wait and I just provide a banter fill, etc. So I'm actually in that scenario, just someone who's making it fun while it gets to the next person to give you a breather, a little bit less fatigue mentally. And I'm very happy to set people up too, or even be the butt of the joke sometimes. So I think other people sometimes struggle with some of those elements. So I think Blair's a good all-rounder. I also just don't think he necessarily has the same likability as some of the other people. He wasn't a former pro, so he doesn't have that status. He's just a good all-rounder. By the way, there's nothing at all wrong with being in B tier here. That still means you're good. You should probably be hired for tier 1 events. If they're hiring 4 or 5 people, you're going to get hired. Look, half these people in S&A don't even bloody work the game or work as analysts. So absolutely, you can still pimp, and Blair can get hired to any event that hires 4 people. There's nothing wrong with that. Also, he's got time. He's worked a bunch of majors now. He's got time to potentially climb up to A. I don't know if he can be S. We'll see about that. Only certain people can be S. That's just the way it goes. Obviously, certain people have been bumped off recently, so everyone can move up a spot on the ladder, can't they? Let me see, who am I going to go with next? Because we might actually just be down into the B tier at this point in time if I look who's there. Like, let me look. Who is there that I haven't done? Like, I think next is actually going to be Thorin. The reason he's B, not A or S, is I actually thought, listen, he's a guy, he's a fun guy. He's very charismatic. So he was amazing. He was a bit like Moses. You love to have him on a desk. You've got a great laugh. It's always going to be fun. He's going to bounce off what you say. Everyone likes him. He's going to work well with everyone. The issue is, one, he did call out players pretty well for a pro player, but he was never going to go as deep as people like me or Lurpus or Maui. he was doing desks for fun. He was also watching with Twitch, if people don't know. So he was never the guy who was putting loads of prep in. Like, I could sometimes tell when he talked, if he hadn't watched that last tournament, I could sort of tell he hadn't seen like what an update or whatever. And he was also going off like scene knowledge, and sometimes even when he knew them as pros or what people have told him within the teams. So I thought he was just a strong B. He was someone that you put on to round out a desk, but wouldn't be one of my first choices. I don't think he did it enough also. And he didn't do it in the modern era enough. He sort of did it in the era of the DreamHacks, where you just come on a desk and he says something funny. So I like to work, one of my favourite people ever to meet in esports and have a drink with and work with, for that matter. I also thought because of his laugh, he's amazing to go with me as well on a desk, isn't he? But I'm going to put him in B tier. He didn't particularly use loads of super deep pro knowledge, in my opinion, but he always had something to say. Threat, and the reason he is going to go B instead of A is he is a nice guy, and he does have some charisma. Like, you like him. He's amiable, let's say that. The problem is he can sometimes be a bit too Swedish. And so as a result, I feel like sometimes he didn't want to go crazy with takes or go on the edge a little bit, which I actually think is an essential thing. You don't have to do it, like Maniac didn't do it in general, but you have to, in theory, have it in your bag if you want to be S tier and maybe even A tier. So I thought his tactical knowledge was excellent again, but he also maybe was better as a colour commentator maybe for that one. Or a core stream he'd probably be good on. I just don't know. Technically, it wasn't so crazy. He didn't do that many events. He clearly didn't approach it as like a full-time job. But he was certainly a very solid guy. I think I'll put him into B. That's pretty legit. Who else am I going with next then? I think I'm next going to go to Dazed. Right, Dazed could be what Steel was. He was never going to go like in as nerdy as Steel, but he had that angle and that eye of an IGL. But first of all, he couldn't be a Sean Getz, because I don't think he was ever amiable and likable enough and popular enough in that sense. He actually wasn't as spicy on the desk as he was as a player and a person. I actually knew him in the early days. He would be way more wild off camera. But when he applied himself, he was pretty good, I thought. And he could also do some pretty interesting insights. And he had his own, he always had his own unique takes on who's good and who's bad and who's not and who's shit and who's never going to make it. I thought that was pretty cool. He just didn't work enough events. So I think I'm going to put him in B tier for now. Let's see, who else am I going to go with here? I think it might be a Semphis angle next. I think we're going to go Semphis. And the reason we're putting Semphis here is this. He actually was sort of a bit like a Lurpus in the sense he was never going super tactical. It was more like it was his perspective on how he sees the game. In fact, if you know how he played, he kind of played a little bit sneaky, a little bit Rat Daughter-esque, and he would do gimmicky things, but he also did know the fundamentals of the game, and he had very strong opinions on players. And so I always thought he was good in that sense. I did think he was one of the people a bit like Steel, a little bit prickly to work with, doesn't always synergize as well. You can sort of tell if they don't fuck with you. Sometimes also over-indexed into thinking the game was just about what they did on the 14th round or the 3 rounds on round 8 to 11. Like that has to also be entertaining. I think the entertainment factor is sometimes what he didn't add enough for me, although he was all right at it. So I'm going to put him in B tier. He also didn't do that many events either, did he? Then I'm going to go with Alan Hender. Now, if he'd done more events and he worked wrong with me, I think he would be a very strong A. But I'm going to put him B for now because he mainly got consigned to working like second tier events, DreamHack Opens, ESL Challenger type events. I always thought he had very good eye for the game as a pure analyst. He obviously coached and you can tell he did. And he was willing to have his own takes and think people were bad and good and didn't always necessarily care about the consensus. But I also think he didn't work on his persona enough or find his niche. By the way, if you don't find your niche, you're probably never going to get into, you'll never get into S, and it's going to be hard to get into A. Even some of the very good people in A didn't necessarily have a niche. Like, what's Moses' niche? We love Moses. You know what I mean? At least Richard Lewis has a niche. So I think his problem there is he had a little bit of a lack of charisma, and he didn't get his own angle of what it was he was going for. Then I'm going to go with, because some people are going to have to start going in C in a second. Is there anyone else I'm going to put in B? I'm going to put Davey there. I've never worked with him, and he hasn't done many events, so I could consider putting him in C. But he actually, in my opinion, is a really good pundit at coming up with like the kind of stuff on a talk show or a desk is really good. Like good opinions, willing to go out there, put himself out on the ledge. It can be spicy. He has game knowledge, but he's not going super nerdy. In fact, I think he maybe even understands not to do that too much. He just didn't get enough reps all night. He actually, someone, as far as I know, he would still work events now if people hired him as an analyst. If you're looking for an analyst, why not get this guy? He can do it all. He has to come from Canada. Also, by the way, he actually follows like football as in soccer. So for Europeans, he can even make analogies that you understand. He's not making some quarterback reference that you're like, I don't follow hand egg or whatever, you know. Maybe he could be C though. We'll see on that one. Then I'm going to go with, I think I'm going to put Hawker there. Hawker and Alan are very similar for me. They're both good at breaking the game down. Hawker obviously wasn't an ex-pro. He's actually quite a good all-rounder. He can do a lot of the things I do. He tries to be edgy, but he's just naturally a little bit of a nerd, so it doesn't come off as well. It's maybe not such a strong flavour. It's more of the watermelon ice of Gamer Supps in that sense. But you like most of the things he's saying. He's making intelligent points. His YouTube content's straight fire. I always thought he was a good fill on a desk. He obviously mainly wanted to be a colour commentator. If people don't know, he used to work with Dinko. Somehow Dinko made it and fucking Hawker didn't. I don't even understand that one. That just blows my fucking mind. That's because tournament organisers have no fucking eye for talent. The joke is half of them they hire either from my recommendation or because they see them on my shows. These people have no fucking... The person doing the hiring doesn't have an eye for who to hire. Oh, for fuck's sake, you morons. No wonder you end up working with people who chop people's heads off. Dickheads. So I always thought Hawker was a solid one there. Maybe if he'd had more events and he'd committed to the desk, he could have been like a low A tier. Vendetta, I'm going to put as maybe the last B. Let me have a look here. I don't know, actually. Let me think on that one. Because I might move a couple of people down in a second. Vendetta has good game knowledge. He's actually probably, after me, by the way, the best person at doing historical stuff. He has a very good historical knife for the game. His problem is he didn't always synergize as well with people. He sometimes had issues like talking a bit too much or not knowing when to throw or how to pick it from them sometimes. Because he was an ex-pro, he was a little bit too obsessed with the pro side, like the Steels and the Semphasis of the world for my money, and Dazed. And you just look at his career, he tended to work low A or B type events, and he just never really got the big reps at the big desks, did he? So someone who probably could have been a high A tier if he'd had a different career. Right, who else am I going with here? Like, is there anyone else in this list that I think deserves to actually be at a higher tier? I'm going to make everyone cry now. I'm going to put Dust. Do you know why? Dust's only problem is this. Dust could probably actually be a low A tier, which means, by the way, be higher to tier 1 events today or any time in history, if he, had been able to commit to it, because obviously he kept trying to cast with Vince, etc., because he wasn't getting gigs at either thing. I get it. He wasn't an ex-pro, so he didn't have that status. Also, because of the fucking Smiths thing, idiots on Reddit still just hate him, even though they don't know what he said. They say he said something he didn't say, provably, on video. So, he got hated on. People felt he didn't have the charisma. It didn't really... when he tries jokes and banter, it just doesn't land, unfortunately. That's part of the issue. So I think amiability he suffers in. But I actually have always thought, if you ever watch, first of all, he does loads of research. Secondly, I always thought he did give legit analysis if you could get past his character and who you think he is and fucking listen. And a decent all-rounder. Technical ability, maybe not super high, although as a caster, obviously it is. Underrated. Dust. Now we're going to go C tier, I think. So into C tier, this is how you know I'm so fucking legit. I'm going to put Kassad. He doesn't get to be B, S, or A. Because here's the thing. He didn't do it enough, in my opinion. He never worked with me on a desk, so I never got to give him any of the feedback or tips I would have given him. He had spicy takes, and he definitely got a mega knowledge of the game, and even a very good strategic overview, which actually is excellent for the desk. His problem was he mainly just did events where it was like him and Yanko, and then it was almost like they just became pals on the fucking desk, and they were thick as thieves. It's like there's a little bit too much coming across on camera in that respect there. You should have gone back and forth a little bit more. I do think if he'd done more events, he could absolutely have gone further up. He's also someone who doesn't give a fuck what people think in a good way. That could work for you. It also can be an issue in terms of like how you craft your persona. You have to figure out what your angles are. I don't know, aside from knowing the game, what he'd be a specialist at. So I'm going to put him C tier for now. Then I am going to put Cadian, who I think if he did loads more events could actually be like an A tier talent. My problem is he's not as spicy on the desk as he thinks he is. Like, his real-life opinions and green room opinions are way spicier than that. I haven't worked with him much, but I just know this from knowing things about his career. He could be, like, a Maui snake, essentially, but he hasn't leaned into that because he wants to be liked. In fact, part of his problem as a player and a talent is he wants to be liked. He thinks he loves the camera and he thinks the camera loves him. It does in some ways, but in some ways as an analyst, he doesn't necessarily deliver. Technical ability's all right. He's a bit Danish, fucking up words sometimes, but you get over that in time. Also, by the way, Pimp should, in my opinion, 5 years ago, have just gone to an elocution expert. I'd have even gone to one that teaches you received English, gotten an amazing accent. By the way, if you want to see an example of what elocution teachers can do, go look up an old video of Vladislava, the team manager of OG, and then look up a modern day thing when she talks. And her accent's gotten way better and way more clear. So Pimp could have just been phenomenal if he'd done that. I think KD obviously has good game knowledge and he knows the players. He just wasn't as spicy as I would want him to be. So he became a little bit vanilla at times for me. Then I am going to say Mo, because he barely did any events. But the joke is, if they'd actually understood how inside the NBA worked, when Moore replaced me on the first week when I couldn't get there was never a world where he was actually going to be there instead of me or had a contract to do it instead of me. I already had a signed contract and I was in the process of getting my visa. They actually should, for real, this might sound harsh, they never would have hired Dust anyway. They should, because it was just going to be me and Moses, have said, actually, that was a pretty good audition. We're going to bring it on and we're going to make it a four-man desk. It's going to be Rich Lewis, the host, Moses, Mo, and Thorin. Because even though me and Mo didn't get along, have never got along, and he's been an utter prick to me online and said outrageous things like mocked me repeatedly for being autistic or lied and said things like in real life, I'm the autistic guy who just looks down. He's never met me in real life. He's never met me and had a conversation with me ever in his entire life. He's never been in the green room with me. So I think that is utterly fucking unforgivably outrageous things to say. But I did think on camera, he wasn't giving great insights in my opinion. He wasn't even giving even pro player insights. But I thought he did come across as charismatic in an asshole way that people enjoy. I actually think me and him going back and forth, wouldn't that have been potentially like Charles Barkley and fucking Shaq? That could have been dynamite. That would be box office TV. I'm sure Rich Lewis agrees with me. They just didn't have the vision to do it at E-League. So he could actually have been potentially like an 8-tier caster, fucking broadcast talent. Then I am going to go with, does anyone else from here actually make it to this tier? Let me think. I think Natu does, because Natu, much like a Moses and a Fifth Lawrence, is a very likeable, amiable character. You just enjoy seeing him on screen. He has a good laugh himself and will join in when it's fun and there's banter going on. He'll give some pro player insights, but he's never going to be spicy. It's just not really his style. He's a bit Finnish in that regard. He also was always working a full-time job the entire time he was doing these gigs, so he never actually had the chance to commit to the role and do it loads and have loads of... You also don't have to just do prep. You have to do many events. If you do like 4, 5, 6, 7 events in a row, then you get really into your shit and you go to a really high level. He didn't really craft his persona except I'm an ex-pro, so I think he could have been a better caster, analyst. Similar reasons, I think the last one I'm going to put here, I think will actually be... No, there might be one more actually. I'm going to put... Peacemaker here. And the reason why is this. His main problem is, anytime it was about Brazilian teams, he was an expert, but it's obvious he had some bias that he couldn't get past. As in, you can be biased to the teams, but you got to be, I don't always just predict the Brazilian team. You know what I mean? That sort of a thing. So I thought he had a little bit of issues there. He didn't do enough events, obviously. For a Brazilian, he had pretty good English and was very understandable. I always thought he's also quite likable on camera. I've always thought, not insanely, but quite likable. Clearly has good tactical insight. Actually, he's a good coach. Seems like he knows how to work roles and set people up and know how team identities should work. Could have been a bigger guy. Could have been further up this list. Just get scored there. Actually, you know what? Fuck it. I think I'm going to put someone else here. I am actually going to put Bobski. And the reason I'm putting Bobski C instead of D is because when I did the Feed the Trolls with him recently, I think you saw a Bobski you've never seen before. That's not the guy you saw on Blast. That's not the guy you saw, I think he did an ESL event, right? You've never seen him like that on camera. He didn't ever do the jokey style, or he wasn't good at it. He was a little bit too stiff, a little bit too serious. He was trying to be the ex-pro and give too many... Look, he was giving good insights. Sometimes he'll give, like, every now and then a really good insight or something he heard in the scene. But he was trying too much to be like, am I Sean Gares? Am I Steele? Am I just, like, professionalism? And I actually think, as you saw there, he should actually lean into a little bit more banter, shit talk, jokey style. Not too much. You don't have to go as far as me and Maui do, but a little bit more more of that. If you open it up, I think makes it a lot better. And then he can do some good insights. And he has very strong opinions. That's the cool thing. Although I personally think his opinions are probably stronger in the green room than on the desk. I'd also, if I worked with him like Pimp, I would encourage him to open that up again. I even told him some of this after that show. It's one of the reasons I agreed to do the show. I was almost certain. If you don't know, here's the secret to me. Because I was an autistic, very antisocial person a long time in my life, but then I eventually wanted to have girlfriends, etc. I learned how to talk to just people in general. And then I did this job on camera and learned how to be charismatic, and I had to be interviewing people, so I had to understand them and understand what they're saying and communicate effectively. So basically, I can just flip the switch and be charismatic with anyone. I can win anyone over if I want to. When I don't want to, then I choose not to do it. I don't want to win everyone. I'm not kidding. I don't need to be loved by everyone. That's not it for me. In fact, I think I need to have certain enemies and shouldn't be liked by certain people to actually define who I am as a person. So I actually think Bobski, if I worked with him, I think I could take him way higher than this. So, but for right now, I'm going to put him C. I'm obviously quite critical of him. I think he can be a bit boring sometimes. Then, just because being a hater, you can't look past people's talent, I do think Nothing could have been like a strong B or a low A. His problem, and this is why me and him didn't get along, is he really did, like Steele, think that if you were a pro, you knew everything compared to the people who weren't pros, and their opinion was always secondary to yours or worthless even. Which is like, you know what? I'll never fuck with that attitude. Not least because I'm better than all of you fuckers on the desk. So you're coming into my domain where I'm the fucking lion, the king of the jungle. You don't even know how the entertainment side works, what I'm doing with banter. I'm not just saying silly things there because I can't make a point about the game. I'm entertaining because the game was shit and no one cared about how fucking FlyQuest played on their T-side of Mirage, mate. They want to know like what I think about Vexite, or if fucking Alistair should leave the team, or if this team's dumb, or if you should even be allowed to have Australian teams get an invite to tier one. That's what I can do that these guys don't think to do. And even worse, they think, here's the thing, not as much for Steele, but nothing. He thinks he's killing it. He thinks he's S tier. And I'm just going to say it right now. This is someone who, he would have called me a friend 10 years ago and said we like each other, right? Because when he was in Lerp's EG team and early on in 1.6, I was trying to like encourage him and talk to him and do interviews with him. But the problem is, first of all, as a friend, he literally betrayed me in a way where someone almost had a fight with me as a result of his cowardly snake-like betrayal. And then I actually thought the way he fucked with me on CS Summit showed he isn't a good analyst. Because what he did was, he came on the couch when I was there and just tried to shut me down everything I said, talk over me every time he could. Every time I made a joke or a funny point, he would be like, let's get back to the game though, and just tried to like alpha me the whole time. Knowing that in that setting, by the way, because people want to hear some pro analysis, I can't just go, we're trying to do jokes now, dickhead. Like, that wouldn't go down very well. He's more liked than I am by plebs. Crucially by plebs. By everyone overall, I don't care what people say. If you had to watch him 10 events in a row, you wouldn't like him more than me. You might for the odd one, when it's novelty, you wouldn't 10 events in a row, I'm telling you, but you can choose to disagree with that. And so I think the way he behaved in terms of synergy and chemistry, I think he never understood what he was doing on the desk. I think he really thought it was just about you and what you think about the game. It's like, you have so much to learn, my young Padawan. And your problem now, mate, is I'm fucking Anakin about to turn into Darth Vader, and you're the youngling that's making me in the temple, innit, bro? You don't get to be trained by me. I give a fuck less how much. Whatever, who gives a shit? Then the last two were obviously going in D. That's going to be Devil Walk and Mahone. Right, Mahone had tactical insight and was good. Well, good. He was decent on Weatherman segments. I thought on actual desks, he was way too stiff. I thought he was too nervous. He couldn't joke properly. I think because he wasn't a pro, he didn't have the same confidence. Someone, if I worked with, I think I could do some interesting things with, but I thought they misused him terribly on desks, and it was just because of his YouTube channel and pros hyping him that they hired him, isn't it? Then there's Devil Walk, who, here's the thing, he could have been an R2. He's quite an amiable guy in real life, but he's been such a dickhead to me on social media that, like, I mean, I already was going to put him in D or C anyway. I think he goes D for me because I have to say, I actually find him boring on the desk. If he's on a desk with me, I know him a little bit from back in the day. I think I could sort of bring something out of him. We could go back and forth. He could call me out on some shit. But on desks, I actually find him just a bit boring. Overly Swedish. I never personally thought he was some mastermind about the game and had super deep tactical insights. And yet he would speak with like a crazy authority. Here's the thing, he's not nervous like Mahone, but he has an authority in like a style that he was speech with. It's like, you're not actually that good at this job though. Not about game knowledge, you're not actually that good at this job though. Like that, some of the things you think are sick that you're saying aren't landing, or people aren't knowing really what you mean by that, or it's not even maybe the appropriate place to make that point. So they have to go D for me, I think, overall. Let me see, would I move anyone around though? Would anyone go up or would anyone go down? Let Let me see. Like, is there anyone in B that deserves to go up to A? I don't think so. I'm actually thinking this list looks pretty good at the moment. I think it looks pretty good. I also never thought Nothing had a very good tactical mind for the game. For me, he's like a Yakinda. Your skills are talent, mate. You go and shoot people in the head. I don't know why you're trying to break it down like you would. Oh, look at the way they're doing fucking mid-control on the right. What the fuck are you talking about? What are you talking about, bro? If I made him go into like Skybox and show you a demo, and then I made the same exact scenario where I put instead the best people Sean get, they'd tear him apart. But I think even people like Alan Hender, fucking Maui Snake, they could go way deeper than him on some of the tactical stuff. Maybe Yanko would body this fucking. Yanko was never on this guy's level as a pro player. You're an idiot if you think because he was a good pro that he knows more than Yanko. He couldn't present himself at all like that. So I think this is my list. Have I hated on people? That's the whole point of a fucking tier list, isn't it? It's my tier list. Who do I think's good? Someone in chat mentioned, so I did miss one person that I think should be on here, actually, because I actually rate him very highly as an analyst, and it's Launders. You know what? I'm going to give you a controversial opinion. I think Launders is and could be a better analyst than he is a colour commentator. I think as a colour commentator, sometimes he doesn't have enough enthusiasm in his voice and doesn't necessarily have the presence as much, especially because he wasn't an ex-pro, so he doesn't have that authority that some of the others do. So I actually think I would put him for real in A tier, or he's between A and B. It's between A and B. I find him very likable, by the way. I think he has good CS knowledge, he has good historical knowledge, he has his own takes, his own opinions, and like Maui, he sets his own memes and trends and then follows them up and refers back to like the whole thing with racism angle or whatever the fuck that is. I also just think if he'd worked with me and he was an analyst the whole time, in fact, I'll tell you straight up, I used to tell him, fucking quit the casting gig, mate, you'll never be a tier 1 caster. Like, but look at all these other duos. I mean, to be fair, I didn't know they were going to break up and fuck off, did I? So I never thought he'd be, look, he is a good caster. He'd certainly be like A tier / borderline S tier as a caster, but I think he could have been a much better lad. I think he had a chance to go up into this S tier with us potentially. So I think actually I'm going to add Launders there. Everyone needs a support network, and mine is, of course, my Patreon community, the Screwminati, who in many ways, they're the Sonny to my Cher, saying, I got you, babe. So this video and all the others on my channel were kindly supported by the following names: Ahmed Hadjou, Mac Pugnatio Rajcula, Adam Tomlin, Animosity, Jensen Goh, Tosh, Tourin, and you know it. Jerky's Minion, my main man, always going to be referenced, one of the best patrons of all time. Would you like to ask a question in my AMA? Maybe you want to suggest a topic or a guest to say on my channel? Do you want teasers? Find out who the upcoming Reflections and Talk to Thorin interviews are. Maybe you want to do one of those long discussions where you get to set the topics we talk about. Well, if any of these or others appeal to you, put your money where your mouth is. Join the Screwminati today via the Patreon link in the description box below.